Frances, happy Friday. How are you?
Good, John. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So it's so wonderful to you've got such an inspiring story. I'm excited to have all of our viewers to hear it, and I see them streaming in now. Uh, and we'd love to get into that, but I think a good place to start is with a short video that can kind of explain your invention. So, and then we'll get into your background. But Jenny, why don't you go ahead and start with that?
If you're a bit like me, you have a few pieces of special lingerie that you want to hang on to as long as you possibly can, like these. But let me ask you this. Are you properly taking care of your bras and panties? I've spent my adulthood smashing my expensive bras in a tight drawer. I've even tried to hang them in the closet on a hanger. Both of these options have been ruining my bras by making them lose their shape and stretching their bands. I have good news though. Now there's a better way to properly store, protect, and organize your lingerie. Hanging Secrets organizes your bras and panties by style and color. And the bra molded compartments protects the bra cups from being crushed. That alone increases the longevity of your lingerie while freeing up to 2 drawer spaces. It hangs in the closet or over the door. Hanging Secrets also helps women start their day with a positive and daily ritual to adorn their bodies with their beautiful lingerie. Hanging Secrets lets you pick your lingerie, and half of the time it takes you to dig through a chaotic dresser drawer. Own your sexiness and your flirtiness in your own home right now. Hanging Secrets holds up to 12 bras and 24 panties. And is a pink product. A percentage of our sales are donated to breast cancer survivors. We have a high star rating on Amazon and have a 100% successful rate, 0 returns. Try us now, 30 days money back guarantee.
So let me, Frances, start by saying this: is I've been married like almost 25 years. I've got 4 daughters, and those videos of those drawers that are just stuffed and overflowing, like I can tell you, at least you could have taken that video in our household. That's the norm. And I think part of the secret, no pun intended, behind the success you're having is that there are, it's a widespread issue. So you're not identifying some small, tiny niche market. You're identifying a need that perhaps half the living population of the world is facing. But one thing I'm going to start with is the name, because I'm a patent attorney, but we also do trademarks, and I'm a huge I guess student of branding, and I know a good brand when I see one, and your name is just phenomenal. So let's start with that. Hanging Secrets. What went into that?
There's a great story behind that. So at the time, my daughter was studying to be a graphic designer, and I had already developed Hanging Secrets, and I just remembered I couldn't figure out a name for it. So I was pondering Hanging Treasures, Bra Essentials, but I couldn't come up with a name. And every now and then I would go to my daughter's room and say, Ashley, what about this name? And one day I went to her room, and I think I had said, what about Keeping Treasures? And she looked at me and she said, Frances. By the way, when we talk business, she calls me by my first name. She says, Frances, you want to make sure that your product name describes what your product does so you don't confuse your consumer. And when she told me that, I said, okay, well, what does it do? I go, okay, it hangs in the closet. What is it hanging? It's hanging my Victoria's Secret bras. So that's how Hanging Secrets came up. And I was very fortunate. My daughter actually created the Hanging Secret logo for us too.
Oh, wow. Well, and it's funny that the hanging part obviously describes
what it does
product, and we can tell that from the video. And I find the term secrets kind of like, you can think of course, Victoria's Secret, but also, back in Victorian times, you could not say the word, bra or panty out loud. They would say you'd have to say it in polite company. or couldn't say that those terms in polite company. And in fact, sometimes, I mean, not too long ago, bras and panties, underwear, all of these items were called unmentionables because
Sure.
you weren't supposed to mention them out loud. So that's where the secret part really ties in. It's very memorable. I think someone that just hears the product name once, it sticks. So it's different than these, like more descriptive type brands that aren't memorable because you can't remember them minutes after you hear them. Of course.
And that's a great point, John, because basically it is a secret what we're wearing underneath, right? No one else
Correct.
sees it but us.
Correct.
So that's a
And,
very good point.
and of course it's not, now it's okay to say it out loud. In fact, Prince Harry in an interview with Obama that I heard, I think a couple of years ago, asked, the president of the United States if he prefers boxers or briefs. That's not, so times have changed, but the name is phenomenal. So
Great, thank you.
always love hearing about how inventors come up with a name and how it is derived, and the story behind that's interesting. But what really blows that away is your background as an inventor and how you got your start. Because in my field, I've been practicing for 25 years. A lot of inventors have this preconceived notion that to be an inventor, there's this perfect mold. You've got to go to the right schools. You have to look a certain way. You've got to have a certain amount of money. And they have these preconceived notions of what it takes to be successful as an inventor. You completely shatter that image on so many grounds. So I don't know where you want to start with this, but let's start out with
Sure.
Just your humble beginnings for you and your family to see where you are now, and start there, because I want the inventors or listeners that are on today to realize that not to prevent themselves, not to stop themselves from dreaming too high because they think that that's something beyond what they're capable of reaching, and not let society create this box that you're supposed to fit into. And that's where I think that would be a phenomenal place to start.
Okay, sure. So my parents immigrated to this country from Mexico in 1963, and they came to Bakersfield, California, and they were field workers, and I was also a field worker. So we were in Bakersfield, California. We were field workers, and back in 1976, Cesar Chavez came out and said, you know what, they no longer wanted children under the age of 16 working in the fields. And that's some really harsh working conditions, and I'm so glad he didn't want that, because with that, my father realized that 80% of his workforce, there was 7 kids, were no longer going to be able to work in the fields. And so at that time, my parents decided to move to San Diego, California. And at one point, John, we were even homeless for a couple of months, living out of our car and working in the field. So very humble beginnings. And now I look back at it, and it's actually a blessing, because, once you've been homeless, you don't believe in obstacles. You just want to keep on moving forward. And we were basically in survivor mode throughout my childhood. And at that time, I got married at a very young age. And I have been working for Costco for the past 27 years in manufacturing. And I believe that, at work, we have a problem, we find a solution. So I basically transferred my skills from having a problem at home to finding a solution. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever think I would be an inventor, a patent holder, or even the video that you just showed, posing in lingerie. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I would be doing that. And again, it starts with an idea. And I think the biggest thing and the most challenging thing, because I constantly run into people and I get asked, I have a lot of ideas and I just don't know which one to start with. But the basic is just getting that idea out of your head onto paper. And that's the first step. And I think once you figure that out, then things start to evolve. You start to see your product, your idea come to life. And I think a lot of people may get stuck in with all these ideas, but just taking that first step, that action step of taking it out of your mind and onto paper is huge. It's key. That's the beginning process. That's your having that aha moment and bringing that aha moment to life.
Yeah.
It's not an easy journey. My first hand sketch was in 2009. You know, I still hold a full-time job, and I would do this and continue to do this on the side. It's a side launch, but it's so enjoyable. You know, I have long days. I start my day at 3 o'clock in the morning and I end it at 10 o'clock at night because I'm so passionate and I really enjoy what I'm doing with hanging sacreds.
Yeah. So, and getting it, as you mentioned, from out of your mind and onto paper, uh, those are, that seems like a baby step, but sometimes that's, it doesn't just happen overnight. Like sometimes it's just held the idea in your mind for a long time, sometimes years before an inventor takes that step. It's hard to even imagine that with your product today. I mean, you're selling on Amazon, you're on the Home Shopping Network. I believe QVC as well. Was that a recent?
Well, we had won a contest on Hanging Secret. We won a contest through QVC on the Sprouts program, so it was launched there online. And then we also won another contest with HSN for Latino entrepreneurs, and it was also on HSN. You know what? But they have a certain amount of quotas of units they have to sell per minute per hour. And at that time, Hanging Secrets didn't meet their quota. But we are on Amazon, and we do have our website, the www.hangingsecrets.com. So again, it's brand recognition. It's getting it out there and continue to, have these opportunities to get brand recognition. As an inventor, sometimes we think all we have to do is create this great idea that's going to sell on its own. And that's not the case. You have to, the same perseverance that you use to develop your product and invent your product, now you have to put on another hat for marketing strategies and brand recognition and getting it out there.
And of course, this exposure of winning these contests has been instrumental in helping brand Hanging Secrets and in getting the word out.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because again, once you're in these competitions and you could say now that your product is made out of quality and it passed the quality control of QVC and HSN with flying colors, yes, that brings you more credibility. Absolutely.
And what was going back to the early part of when it was in your mind and then it went to paper with a sketch? What was the aha moment where you realized that, hey, there's a need for this?
I was going through the emptiness syndrome and I had all this extra time on my hands. And I said, Frances, what are you going to do with all this extra time on your hands? I said, you know what? I'm going to start cleaning and organizing my home. And I started in my bedroom. I pulled out my drawer and my bras and panties were a mess. I had my daily routine. I would pull everything out, throw it on the bed, search for that bra, search for that panty, grab it, put it back in the drawer, and then walk over to the closet and get my blouse. And I said, you know what? This is not efficient. And sometimes, John, I would even grab my bra and it still had the tag on it, and the bra cup was actually crushed because it get crushed in the drawer. So at that point, I said, you know what? There has to be a better way. So I did my first hand sketch. And if you look, I still have my first hand sketch. I think it's very important for an inventor to keep a log, a journal of everything they're doing. And I have my journal book and I did my hand sketch and it looks like if a second grader did it. At that time, the key was getting it out of my head and onto paper. And then from there, I was able to hire a graphic designer to create the die lines and make it a prototype and make it come more to life. So there was several prototypes before we actually sent it out to get it manufactured prototype by a professional.
And as a patent attorney, I see a lot of those initial sketches, and so I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, sometimes it's just they do look like they could be done with crayon on paper. I've seen prototypes that are made out of foam cups and Play-Doh and cardboard, whatever an inventor can find.
Yes.
I'd love to hear about your first prototype and what went into creating that.
Sure. Oh my goodness. Sorry, I got a call. What went into that was that at the time Costco was selling bathing suits, and they had a plastic body, and it had the bra shape, the bra cups. So I went in and asked for a few samples. They said sure. So I went home, I cut out the bra section, the part that I needed. I had my sister help me sew because she knew how to sew, and we put it together. It cost me about $20, and we did it on my kitchen table. And but once you actually create your prototype, you realize, you have to test it to see if it functions. Is it functionable? And by creating a prototype, that's the only way you're going to know. It takes a different form from when it's a hand sketch to the actual prototype. And the advice that I could give now with the experience that I have is that when you're developing the prototype, see how small, how foldable, and how light you could make it, because you have to remember, if you're going to ship it to a customer, the weight, the size of the product is really going to determine your shipping costs. And at that time, 5 years ago, when I was in the R&D of Hanging Secrets, I didn't think of that. And now whenever I get that opportunity, I said, you know what, I tell inventors, when you're in that R&D process, see if you could fold it, make it lighter, and see how cost effective you could make it. Because again, there's a shipping cost that's involved. And if you don't do that at the very beginning, you'll pay for it later.
Yeah. Well, that's great advice for inventors. Sometimes you'll even see in the market products that are lighter and more compact, beating out other products simply because the shipping plays such an important role now with the way people shop. So it's important to adapt as an inventor, and inventors are resourceful. You adapt and you try to figure out the best way to get your product to the end user, to your consumer.
Yes, and with this, so much online shopping now, the shipping, that's, you have to be aware of that cost.
And so how many iterations of prototypes did you go through before you got a final version?
I would say at least 4.
Okay. Wow.
At least 4. Yeah. And, again, I believe another transferable skill, you have to have a quality item, a quality product. There were other routes where you can get a better price. But again, with my manufacturing experience, the quality is your brand, is your, what the customer experience is going to be. So keeping that in mind also, sometimes, when you're negotiating prices or working with different vendors, different manufacturers, I always recommend get 3 quotes. And sometimes the cheapest quote is not the best quote. It's, you have to really look at the quality of the product, and also, the relationship with the manufacturer. Are they promising, are they keeping their promises and saying, your sample will be done by this date? And when they ship it to you, what type of condition does it come back in? Did it get damaged through transit? So a lot of things during that process, when you're sourcing out vendors, you can determine, again, which manufacturer is going to be the most compatible with you, because it has to be a win-win for both parties. And quality was number one thing that went into the development of Hanging Secrets. And again, winning those contests and having Hanging Secrets pass their quality assurance with flying colors, that was it paid off. It paid off.
So, and I have as a patent attorney, I'm constantly finding that there's this misconception out there that a new idea, that there's some complexity requirement before the patent office will issue a patent. I'm trying to think of, like here, and there's many examples, but like the Post-it note is one example of a patented product that's fairly simple. It's like paper with removable glue. Did you find with Hanging Secrets, I know you went ahead and obtained a patent. Did you have to struggle with that, thinking, gosh, is this, it's not a complex machine, it doesn't have moving parts, it doesn't use electricity. Is this going to rise to the level of something that you can protect? Was that an obstacle that you were grappling with, or you just had the mentorship or the knowledge to know that, hey, this thing is unique enough that I'm going to pursue it?
Yeah, no. All I knew was that I Googled the heck out of it, and I didn't see anything like it. But I was fortunate because I had a friend who worked for the patent office, and he went out on his own and he became a patent agent. So with his help, I was able to obtain my patent, but I had no idea that sometimes even if you Google it, you have to do a patent search, because maybe the idea and the patent was issued, but the inventor never brought it to market.
Correct.
So that was one of the things that I learned during this process, that sometimes even if you Google it, it's not going to guarantee you that you're not infringing on someone else's patent. So in that case, I was fortunate enough that I did have a patent agent that was able to source that out and figure it out. But I had no idea all the details and all the requirements you actually need in order to be issued a patent. So I consider myself very fortunate.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned going to Google to look to see if your idea is out there. You're also fortunate in a sense that there's a lot of risks associated with doing searches
Yes.
online. I mean, these are, they're corporations, but after all, there's people at Amazon, at Google that see search terms. There's marketing companies that get access to search terms. And if your terms are simple enough, you might give away the idea.
Yes.
The example I often use is, if you invent a glow-in-the-dark kite, and that's what you type in is glow-in-the-dark kite, it doesn't take too much imagination for somebody to see those terms and figure out what you have. But the fact that your patent's granted, of course, means that you're first, because patents are awarded on a first-to-file basis, which, considering the huge market share that you're going after, and that's a huge accomplishment, because there are products, and I've never seen them for hanging like bras or panties or things like that, but there's plenty of products to prevent damage in a washer or a dryer. And I find it, after learning more about your product, I find it ironic that people go through all these steps to make sure that their bra doesn't get damaged in the dryer or in the washer while cleaning, and then just stuff them into this drawer, like even jam-packed. And even if it's not, just taking, there's no way to really layer inside a drawer. So you've got to basically, exactly what you mentioned, take the bunch out, throw everything on the bed or whatever, on a countertop, whatever's close by, take what you want, and then stuff everything back in. Right. And that's one of the key things that inventors do, is they try to identify a problem that they believe is widespread. Another doubt and another, I think, limiting belief that holds inventors back sometimes is this thinking that, okay, I'm dealing with this, but it's just me, that other people are not facing this issue or are not bothered by it. Was that something that you had concerns about, or you had, as being, one of, I believe, 7 kids, and you have kids yourself, and you just realize that this is not just you, this is not just me, this is going to help other people as well?
Yeah, well, once I did my hand sketch and once I did the prototype, then I started asking. I started to get curious, exactly like what you said. Wait a minute, am I the only one having the problem, or is everybody else's? So I started asking around, and this came to random strangers, to family members, and I started to ask, and the ladies were saying, "Well, I put mine in a shoebox so they don't get damaged, the real fancy ones, the expensive ones, or I place them in the closet and I just lie them at the top of the counter." And other ladies were saying, "Well, you know what? I get socks, I roll them up and I put them in the cups so the cups don't deform." So I had all these different versions of how women were actually trying to protect their bras. Or I hang them on the doorknob, or I hang them on the towel rack, or I hang them over the door. So everybody had their different version of taking care of their bras. So I knew at that point, I go, okay, yeah, no, I'm not the only one.
So it's funny you mentioned that, because a lot of times a key to for an inventor is seeing how others are improvising in consumers to make a product work for them that the manufacturer doesn't address. Like one example that I think of, we've all seen somebody using a walker, and they'll take a tennis ball. I'm going to hold this up, and they'll put a tennis ball on the bottom to help it slide, or to kind of to help with shock absorbing as well. Like if the manufacturer makes a product the right way, obviously now this feature is built into a lot of walkers. They have sliding mechanisms, they have shock absorption, but it wasn't always that way because the designers were not looking at that. Many times they were not using a walker themselves. So the person that designs it
Yes.
walks around a conference room a couple times and says it's done, but they don't have to take 1,200 steps in a day to find, oh, you know what, this isn't comfortable. A lot of what's happening with, especially products for, or any type of products for women, is that for years, the designers were men. So they were not the ones that were having to store bras or panties or figure out how to take them out. They weren't addressing that. And that is changing with a lot more engineers and inventors becoming women. But I think I had heard an interview from you before that you're shocked at the small percentage of inventors that are female.
Right, John. And I have a tagline for that. You know, it takes a woman to know what a woman needs, right? And
Yeah.
that's what we need to organize, because we're experiencing a challenge. And a lot of times when you know, I've got the opportunity to pitch it to an all men panel, you know, sometimes they says, wow, I didn't even know that was a problem. And I said, well, have you seen the bras hang on the door? Hey, they know that they hang on the door, but they didn't really know why they were hanging on the door.
Right.
So again, and 5 years ago when we launched Hanging Secrets, I reached out to a patent attorney, and I was just curious because I'm a little data driven, and I was just curious, and I asked her, you know, what's the percentage of women receiving patents in the United States? So she did some research, and at that time in 2005, she came back with, you know, only 7% of patents issued in the United States are issued to sole female inventors, and less than 0.5% are issued to Latinas. And on an average, at that time, it was like 10 to 12% of patents issued that had one woman's name on the patent. So at that point, I officially made myself the female ambassador for women inventors, because, you know, if we don't bring awareness of those numbers, of that data, how can we, you know, how can we address that challenge? We're half of the population. We should be coming up with half of the ideas of problem solving. So again, I'm a very strong believer, and whenever there's an opportunity like this, and I thank you for this opportunity, I always like to bring awareness to that. And you can't do it alone. It's a very tough journey. It's a very tough journey, and you can't do it alone. So again, supporting the community of women to become inventors, that's, you know, that's something very dear to me.
Yeah. And you know what, as you know, I'm an engineer as well, but you don't have to be an engineer to be able to do the math to know that if 7% of patents are solo female inventors, then 93% are not. So
Yeah,
there's
right.
a huge disparity there. So when I had said at the beginning that you're really breaking a lot of stereotypes that people have about inventors, the type of background that they're supposed to have, the type of the education, whether they're male, whether they're female.
Right.
There's this perception out there that inventing, it's great, but it's for people of privilege, right? You grow up with,
Right.
you know, it's like, and you have the luxury of sitting around, you know, maybe on a trust fund and just coming up with ideas. So it does a lot to hear from somebody who was doing farm work, grew up doing farm work, that, you know,
Right.
not with the traditional like visions of wealth and privilege that some people think inventors must have, and launched the idea while working full time. And you know, as in being a mom and the whole bit, like there's so much that
Right.
goes into inventing. And you mentioned the hours, I don't remember them now, but they sure sounded tough, like something until
3
sometime.
a.m. 3 a.m. in the morning till 10 p.m. at night.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
For the past 5 years, going on 6 years. But again, you know, Hanging Secrets is my passion, and I really enjoy what I do. I get to meet a lot of people. I get to, you know, learn a lot more, and I love to learn. And I think when you're open and love to learn, you know, gives you the energy that you need. And I really want to say, John, the only difference from me and from someone else who has an idea, the only reason I'm an inventor is because I took action. That was it, because we're all very creative. We all have our aha moments. And again, it's just taking action, believing in yourself, and knowing it's not going to happen overnight. But if you truly believe in your problem that you're solving, you can make it happen. You just need to take action and surround yourself with, some great resources. There's a lot of resources out there that could help you now than what it was back in 2015.
Well, what a phenomenal, I can't even think of what else to, typically I'll end with, like, what advice would you have for other inventors out there? But that your advice is just golden. It's so on point.
Thank you, John.
We're out of time. I know these days
Okay.
with the pandemic, everyone is kind of zoomed out. So we have to promise a half hour. But I would love to have you come back. There's so much more that we can go into in terms of prototyping. The marketing aspect, you're just such a phenomenal spokesperson for the product. And you said it best, like about 5-10 minutes ago, when you said, sometimes inventors think that the hardest part is coming up with the invention itself, and their skill set should be tied to that. But you wear so many different hats as an inventor, and being the chief publicist and PR person is an important aspect. We could have an entire show just on that
alone.
steps you've taken there. But we'll have you come back for that. For now, I want to thank you.
John.
I know you've got a busy day ahead of you as well. So thank you so much for joining us and for providing your knowledge and your inspiration to the inventing community.
Thank you, John. Thank you for having me. And again, I'm on LinkedIn. I can be reached in on LinkedIn. So any of your viewers would like some advice, I'd be more than happy to help and support.
Terrific. We'll have, I have a group on Facebook, the Inventors Mastermind, and we'll post your information there. So
awesome.
There
Thank
it is,
you so much.
right there. Jenny's put it on the chat channel now. But
nice.
if Jenny just does a search on Facebook for the Inventors Mastermind, they'll be able to contact Frances that way. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you.